For that introduction. He pointed out to me that I actually introduced him on a previous occasion when he was the keynote speaker, so turnabout is fair play. And I couldn't help but think, sitting up here in the bright Texas sun, Sun City is aptly named. And it's wonderful to be back with all of you today on this important day. His name has been mentioned before, but I want to repeat it because I want to thank General Chuck Graham, who most of you know was the longtime MC at this event. He's a retired three-star general who graduated from West Point, I believe was pointed out in 1950. And of course, he coordinated this event for many years before turning 90 last December. I didn't know 90 was a retirement age at which you could cease being the MC, but it's great to see you, General. Thank you for everything you did to make this possible. I want to start by mentioning an important number, and that is 4,000. 4,000 is the rough number of bricks that make up this plaza. And you know, many of them represent a fallen service member or a family that lost a loved one in one of our nation's wars. And of course, more than just a brick, behind each of them is a story of courage, a story of sacrifice. Those bricks and all the people that chose to commission them are the reason we are here today. Because Memorial Day, if it's about anything, it's about remembering the fallen. I'm sure many of you will visit grave sites today, lay flowers on those grave sites, and remember fallen family members who have passed on. But it's important to remember that this is not just a solemn occasion. This is a celebration. We don't mourn Memorial Day. We celebrate it.
Amen.
We miss our loved ones who have given that last measure of devotion. But we also celebrate them and their sacrifice because they have given us a remarkable gift. Their sacrifice has ensured that our freedom has been secured. If certain battles had not been fought or wars not waged, the world would look much different. And that's a good reason to be grateful. Of course, we all remember Ronald Reagan. President Reagan once said, "Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on." The people who fought for our freedom and our way of life are those men and women who have served at bases both at home and abroad, in the Air Force, the Navy, the Army, Marines, and the Coast Guard. It was, I'm sure, never easy for them or their families. The veterans who are in attendance today and their family members know that. And we shouldn't sugarcoat the sacrifices they made, and in many instances the blood that was shed in places like Gettysburg and Antietam. Let's remember the physical and mental challenges experienced by those service members as gunfire rained down on them at Normandy, as explosions lit up the sky at Pearl Harbor, and more recently during the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. Those conflicts, to be sure, have inspired some great movies, but for the people who were there, this is not about entertainment. For them, these are the stories of their lives. On days like this, I think I especially remember my dad, who was Senator Schwartner in the Army Air Corps before the Air Force was actually created, but who then went on to serve for 31 years in uniform. But back during World War II, he was stationed at an Air Force base in Molesworth, England. The 8th Air Force, the 303rd Bomb Group, known as the Hells Angels. These were the B-17s who flew across the English Channel and degraded Germany's industrial might and made it possible for us to win the war. On his 26th mission, and I'm told that many pilots flew 25 missions because this was especially precarious, but for some reason that I don't know, he flew on his 26th mission when he was shot down and captured as a prisoner of war. By the grace of God, he survived prison camp. I remember later in life when he was called an ambulance because he was having some physical ailment. It turned out he had an obstruction of his intestine caused by scar tissue that was left as a result of an appendectomy that was done while he was a POW. Can you imagine not only surviving being shot down, but also an appendectomy in a POW camp during World War II? But of course he survived, came back to the United States as part of that greatest generation, and met my mother from Robstown, Texas, down around Corpus Christi. She now rests beside him at Fort Sam Cemetery in San Antonio. She's a reminder to me that not only do those who wear the uniform serve, but the spouses and family members who love them and care for them and worry about them serve as well. She's a powerful reminder to me of the indispensable role that spouses play behind every service member, especially now with an all-volunteer military. There is always a family who serves too. Of course, my parents have long passed on, but my job as your United States Senator is to learn from the lessons of our nation's history and the stories that our veterans and active duty military tell, and to make sure that we do our part, keep up our part of the bargain. I had the chance over a week ago to my office to present a World War II medals to Sergeant Julio Izquierdo, who during World War II earned combat medals, but he never got them. So at the ripe old age of 100, we got him those medals.
Yay.
These included two Bronze Stars and a Purple Heart, and I'm glad he now has those precious symbols of his valor with him in his possession, and that his 9 children and numerous grandchildren will be able to see their nations, our nation's appreciation of his service. And not far from Sergeant Izquierdo in Austin is a fellow named Richard Overton that you may have read about or seen his picture in the Austin paper. He's the longest living veteran in the United States. He just turned 112 on May the 11th. Well, asked, what is your key to a long, productive life? He said, well, I enjoy smoking a cigar now and then and sipping whiskey now and then on my porch. And I never forget the day I visited with him. He just got through mowing his lawn earlier that morning.
Oh, man.
Well, these are just two of the amazing stories of the men and women whose service we celebrate today. The veterans who attend our churches, who shop with us at the same stores and live with us in communities like Sun City. There are about 1.7 million veterans living in the state of Texas. 1.7 million. And of course, there are plenty of service members here who still serve at our nation's 15 active duty military bases. These service members, like those that came before them, understand that our citizenship as Americans requires something of each of us. They understand that blessed as we are with rights, they come with responsibilities to serve in our own way and to protect. How we fulfill those responsibilities is of tremendous consequence, because at the end of the day, our nation is only as strong as the men and women who defend it and serve it. They are our sword and our shield. We all of our service members, past and present and future, simple acknowledgement and thanks. That much is obvious. We should tip our hat to them when we see them on the street or in the airports. We should thank them, yes, for their service. But we should also be inspired by their example to each act more bravely and more boldly ourselves. I read this morning in the Dallas Morning News, James McGillis, known as Maggie, he's only 101, but he lives in Fort Worth. He's one of the most decorated veterans of the 82nd Airborne Division, fighting at the Battle of the Bulge. He said, people call me a member of the greatest generation, but he said, I think that's wrong. I think the greatest generation of Americans is yet to be born. Humble remarks from such a great soldier. Later this afternoon, I'm going to have the chance to go to San Antonio to meet with some high school seniors who inspire me regularly. These are the young men and women who've accepted appointments at our service academies. Yes. I have this send-off every year. I get to nominate some, but every member of Congress does. And we invite all of them who are going, those coming from Texas, to join us at the send-off. And each year I am inspired by their discipline and by their dedication and their desire to serve our country. I know we all worry about the next generation of Americans, but if you meet these young men and women, you won't worry as much as you might have, because these are young Americans who have answered the call to service. So today, when we remember the fallen, we can also look forward to our future, a future of hope, knowing that our nation's legacy is being carried forward by this new generation. The burden on all of us, the responsibilities to serve our country, remain heavy. But I believe that this next generation of Service Academy students will be up to the challenge. So to all of the men and women who have chosen a life of military service, and for those who've made the ultimate sacrifice, I will close by saying this. Our nation is indebted to each of you. It is stronger because of each of you. And every time we see an American flag waving, we should remember that. Thank you to all of our veterans and to all of those who chose to come celebrate Memorial Day here in Sun City. May God bless you, and may He continue to bless our state, Texas, and the United States of America. Thank you.